Welcome back, night wanderers, to Nakora Nights, Halloween. A night of candy and costumes, but also a night when the shadows come alive and things that shouldn't exist walk among us. Tonight we're revealing 10 true Halloween horror stories, terrifying encounters that will make you question every door knock, every flickering light, every sound in the dark, children disappearing, never to be found, gifts left at doorsteps that shouldn't exist, shadows moving in ways that defy reality. Before we enter the darkness, I want to know, where are you watching from right now? And what time is it where you are? Because some of these horrors only appear after midnight. If you're brave enough to face the unknown, smash that like button, subscribe, and comment below. I survived Halloween night. If you dare to stay till the last story. Now, turn off your lights, put on your headphones, and listen closely. This is 10 Untold Most Disturbing True Halloween Horror Stories. Let's begin. I was 12 the year everything changed. Halloween had always been my favorite thing in the world. That one night when the air itself felt alive, smelling like burnt leaves, cold metal, and pumpkin guts. It made the world feel wide and strange, like anything could happen if you stayed out long enough. Back then, my family had just moved to Ravens Creek, Oregon, a quiet town tucked between pine woods and power lines, where the wind always seemed to whisper just under your breath. All the houses looked the same: chipped paint, half-dead lawns, yellow porch lights that hummed like sick bees. My parents were strict about curfews, but that Halloween, they loosened up. Mom told me, "You can go with your friends, but be back before 9:30 p.m. She said it with that fake calm voice that moms use when they're already nervous. Dad laughed from behind the newspaper, saying something about cavities and stomach aches, and that was it. I was free for the night with my bike, my bag, and a sky full of stars. My best friend Noah lived a few blocks away, near the newer part of town where the houses still smelled like paint and the lawns weren't dead yet. He was already waiting outside when I pulled up, wearing a half-torn ghost mask that barely clung to his face. His little sister Maddie tagged along too, dressed like a fairy with glow sticks in her hair. We hit every porch on the block, laughing, running, arguing over who got more chocolate. The smell of smoke drifted from somewhere nearby, mixing with the cold night air. Every now and then, Noah would say something stupid like, "These fun-sized bars are a scam, man. Nothing fun about less candy." Maddie giggled so hard she almost dropped her pumpkin bucket. By 9:15 p.m., our bags were heavy, our feet were sore, and most porch lights had gone out. I was thinking about heading home when Noah said, "One more street, come on." There's a house down the hill that gives out full-size candy bars, but my curfew was strict, and I didn't want to push it. "I gotta go," I said. "You sure you'll be good riding alone?" he asked, voice serious for once. "Yeah," I lied. I do it all the time. The streets were empty when I started back. Decorations flapped in the wind, their shadows long and strange on the walls. The plastic skeletons that had looked funny in daylight now twitched and swayed like they were breathing. My tires crunched on the sidewalk. The cool air nipped at my face. I remember thinking how peaceful it was, how grown-up I felt. Just me, my bike, and the night. Then I saw him. He was standing by the fence near the old water tower, where the orange streetlight flickered like a dying pulse. A tall man, hood up, cigarette glowing faintly between his fingers. The smoke curled around his face like fog. His shadow stretched across the cracked pavement, too long, too still. "Nice costume, kid," he said, his voice rough and low. I slowed my bike, unsure if I should answer. "Thanks," I said finally. "What are you supposed to be?" "Red Hood," I muttered, adjusting the jacket that used to be my dad's. He smiled faintly. "Cool jacket. Little big on you though, huh?" Something about the way he said it made the hairs rise on my neck. He took another drag, the ember flashing red. "You get much candy tonight?" "Yeah," I said. My voice came out quieter than I meant. He nodded slowly, eyes on the bag. "You mind if I grab a few?" Haven't had any kids come by where I'm at. It didn't seem like much to ask. He looked older, maybe mid-30s, tired. His face wasn't mean, just blank. I reached into my bag, pulled out a few bars, and handed them over. He took them, smiling. "Thanks, man. Appreciate it. He chewed one and looked at my bike. That your ride? Yeah, nice. You live nearby? I hesitated. My mom's voice echoed in my head. Never tell strangers where you live. Just a few blocks over, I said, pointing in the wrong direction. He flicked a cigarette, the ashes glowing like fireflies. Cool, cool. You should be careful, though. A lot of weird people out tonight. I gave a nervous laugh. Yeah, I guess so. That's when everything went wrong. A heavy blur, a flash of metal, the sound of my bike hitting the ground. The world spun sideways, my ears ringing. When my eyes opened, I was on the pavement, my palms stinging, blood in my mouth. My bike was half on top of me, chain tangled around my leg. The man stood over me, something glinting in his hand, a knife. Give me the bike, he said calmly. What? The bike. Louder now. My heartbeat drowned out everything. I kicked at the frame until it rolled off, and he snatched it up. He looked at my shoes next. My brand new sneakers, the ones my brother had given me last week. Nice shoes, he said, almost like he was joking. Take them off. I froze. They're my brother's. He stepped closer, blade catching the light. Take them off. I didn't move fast enough. The punch hit me before I saw it. My vision went white. When I came to, he was kneeling, untying the laces himself, humming softly like it was nothing. He stuffed the shoes under his arm, looked at me, and smiled. I'll leave you with your candy, though, he said, and rode off into the dark. I sat there for a long time, barefoot, my chest shaking, my eyes burning but no tears coming out. The wind howled through the empty streets, rattling the decorations. Somewhere, a motion sensor light flicked on and off like a heartbeat. I walked home barefoot, every rock digging into my feet. The bag of candy swung at my side, rustling like dry leaves. By the time I reached our street, all the lights were out except for one, the porch light. Mom screamed when she saw me. Dad came running. The rest was a blur of police lights, questions, and voices that sounded far away. They never found him. Not the man, not the bike, not even the knife. For weeks, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that streetlight and the way his shadow swallowed mine. But it didn't stop there. A month later, I got an email. No sender name, just the words, nice shoes. At first, I thought it was a prank, maybe Noah messing around. But then another came, with a picture attached. A blurry shot of me riding my bike that night. The same jacket, the same streetlight. I deleted it, changed my passwords, told no one. But every few nights, I'd see a shadow by the edge of my yard, standing where the light didn't reach. The emails kept coming. Sometimes, just a single line. I left you with your candy, remember? You can't hide. Trick or treat, kid. Eventually, I shut down all my accounts. No phone, no social media, nothing. And that's when the printed photos started showing up, taped to my window, slid under my door, sometimes folded neatly in the mailbox. Every one of them was a shot of me sleeping. I tried to tell myself it wasn't real, that maybe it was all a nightmare stretched too long. But every Halloween, like clockwork, something new appears. One year, a single sneaker left on my porch. Another, a candy bag filled with rocks. The last thing I ever got was a letter, no stamp, no handwriting, just printed words that said, you shouldn't have lied about where you live. Now I live in the city. I work night shifts, keep the lights on, keep a bat by the door. I tell myself I'm fine, that he's gone, that it's all behind me. But every October, when the air turns cold and the sky smells like smoke, I can still hear that voice in my head, calm, quiet, like he's standing right behind me. I'll leave you with your candy, though. And sometimes, late at night, when I drive past a flickering streetlight, I swear I still see him, just standing there, waiting, smiling like he never really left. Because monsters don't always hide in shadows. Sometimes, they walk right up to you, smile, and make you believe they're human. I swear it started like any other Halloween. The smell of burning leaves in the air, kids laughing in costumes, the glow of porch lights blinking orange and purple across the streets of Ravenhill. I was 17 then, old enough to roam free but still young enough to feel that pulse of October magic. It was the year everything felt like it could last forever. before the night that changed what Halloween meant for me. Ravenhill wasn't big, a quiet town wrapped between forests and farms, with long streets that bent around the hills like they were hiding something. Everyone knew each other's names. The teachers had taught your older siblings, and gossip traveled faster than smoke from the chimneys. That year, Halloween fell on a cold Friday. My friends and I had planned it for weeks. No parents, no rules, just candy, chaos, and freedom. It was around 7:45 p.m. when we met up outside my friend Ryan's place. He lived on Oak Ridge Lane, where the trees were tall enough to block half the streetlights. He came out wearing fake stitches across his face and a shredded football jersey. "Zombie quarterback," he said, smirking. Sergio showed up next, a werewolf mask hanging off his face, fogging every time he breathed. Morrison had thrown on a black cape with plastic fangs that barely stuck. I, on the other hand, had gone for something simple, a scarecrow, made from one of my dad's old flannel shirts, straw poking from the cuffs. We joked, shoved each other, and talked about whose bag would be heavier by the end of the night. The whole town was alive. Kids screamed from across the block, porch lights flickered, music played faintly from speakers hidden in bushes. For a while, it was perfect. Until it wasn't. After an hour or so, we hit a snag. The best decorated houses had lines. Actual lines of kids wrapping down the sidewalk, all waiting for one piece of chocolate. "Dude, this is taking forever," Morrison groaned, dragging his cape. "We'll be old by the time we hit the next house." Ryan grinned like he had a plan. "Let's hit the quiet streets. No decorations, no crowds. Bet they still give candy." Sergio made a face under the mask. "Or slam the door in our faces." Ryan shrugged. "Worth a shot." And that was it. The dumbest decision of the night. We walked 3 blocks past the glow of carved pumpkins and music until we reached Hawthorne Street, where the houses were older, the lights dimmer, and the trees leaned in like they were listening. It was the kind of street no one trick-or-treated on anymore. The air felt different there, thicker somehow, colder. "Look," Ryan said, pointing ahead. A small brick house sat halfway down the block, porch light glowing faintly yellow. No decorations, no pumpkins, just that light. "Light means candy," I said, trying to keep it normal. "Let's do it," Morrison replied, already heading up the path. We stopped at the door and yelled together, "Trick or treat." For a few seconds, nothing. Then the door creaked open, just enough to reveal a boy around our age, maybe 16 or 17. His skin was pale, his hair hung messy over his forehead, and his eyes were sunken like he hadn't slept in days. He wore a gray hoodie stained at the sleeves, no costume, no smile. He didn't say anything, just stared. Morrison gave an awkward laugh. Trick or treat?" The boy blinked once, then quietly closed the door. We just stood there. "Well, that was fun," Sergio said, laughing nervously. "Maybe he's shy," I offered. "Or creepy," Ryan muttered, already knocking again. The door opened faster this time. The boy's face looked different, tighter, angry. "You knocked again?" His voice was hoarse, shaking. Ryan smirked. "We thought maybe you forgot the candy part of Halloween." The boy's eyes darkened. "Get off my porch. Come on, man, don't be that guy." Then his voice broke into a scream that sliced through the air. "If you knock again, I'll kill you." Everything stopped. The air went still. Sergio chuckled weakly. "Okay, time to go." But Ryan, being Ryan, pressed the doorbell and held it down. The buzzing echoed through the quiet street. "Ryan, stop," I hissed. The door burst open. The boy stepped out, holding a knife, not a kitchen knife. It looked antique, almost ceremonial, with a curved blade and tarnished metal that caught the porch light. We ran. The boy screamed behind us, "You shouldn't have come here." We tore down the street, our bags bouncing, candy spilling behind us. The sound of his footsteps slammed against the pavement, that faint metallic clink of the blade following every stride. "He's chasing us," Morrison shouted. "Don't look back," I yelled. We cut across lawns, leapt over fences, and dodged mailboxes. My lungs burned, and my costume tore on a branch. The world blurred into shadows in panic. Then I saw a woman dragging a trash bin near the curb. "Help, he's got a knife," I screamed. She froze, then ran back inside, slamming her door. That kind of fear, when you realize no one's coming, it hits different. Ryan veered toward an open garage up the street. "In there!" We sprinted inside and slammed the door shut just as the boy reached it. The first bang shook the whole frame. "Holy crap," Sergio whispered, shaking. "He's gonna come in." "No, he won't," I said, my voice trembling. From inside the house, we heard a man shout, "What the hell's going on out there?" The inner door opened, revealing an older man in a flannel shirt holding a phone and a gun. His face went hard when he saw us. "There's some kid out there," I gasped. "He's got a knife." The man moved quickly, lifting the garage door just enough to peek outside before slamming it again. "Yeah, I'm calling the cops," he muttered. Outside, the pounding continued. Then the scraping, metal against metal, screeching like nails on a coffin lid. It felt endless. Then, somewhere between the banging and the silence, I noticed something new, a faint sound behind us, a soft electronic ding. The man's smart TV, mounted on the wall inside his kitchen, had turned itself on. Images began to flash across the screen, not static, not channels, photos. Photos from my phone. A chill ran through me. They were selfies, screenshots, even one from earlier that night, the group of us laughing on Ryan's porch. "What the hell?" I whispered. The man turned, confusion on his face. "Is that your phone doing that?" "No." "It's not even..." I pulled it out. The screen was black. Dead. Then, in the middle of the slideshow, the TV froze on a picture none of us had ever taken. It showed the garage door, from the outside, and a figure standing there smiling. The older man lifted his gun. Back away from the door. Sirens wailed in the distance. Blue and red lights began to flash through the cracks at the bottom of the door. The banging stopped. When the cops opened the garage, the boy was on the ground, face down, knife beside him. His hoodie torn, his breathing shallow. He couldn't have been more than 16. They cuffed him gently, loaded him into a car. I remember the officer, a woman, asking him softly, "Why did you chase them, son?" He muttered something that didn't make sense. They were already inside. That night stuck with me for years. Later, we found out the boy's name was Roman Lorne. His parents worked overseas, gone most of the time. He stayed home alone for months, surviving on food deliveries and online therapy sessions. But here's the strange part. 2 weeks before that Halloween, someone had hacked his therapist's account and leaked his private sessions online. Every secret, every fear, every word he'd confessed to the only person he trusted, made public. After that, he stopped going to school. The neighbor said he sat on the porch every night, staring at the forest behind the house, whispering things no one could hear. They said his internet connection stayed active all night, even when the power went out. No one pressed charges. He was sent to a treatment center upstate. I didn't see him again. My mom found out, of course. Word spreads fast in Ravenhill. She grounded me for months and banned Halloween completely. Said she'd rather I hate her than end up dead. It's been over a decade since that night. I'm 28 now, and I work in tech support for a local company. I spend my nights fixing people's digital lives, phones, routers, smart devices, but sometimes, when I'm logged into a client's network, I see strange connections pop up, devices with no name, cameras I can't identify. And every year on Halloween, I drive past Hawthorne Street. The house where Roman lived is still there. The paint is peeling, the yard's gone wild, and the mailbox hangs crooked. No one's lived there since. But sometimes, just before dusk, the porch light flickers on for a few seconds. Then it goes dark again. Last year, I noticed something new. When I got home and turned on my TV, it powered up on its own, showing a slideshow. Pictures from my phone, from that night. And one last image, the old brick house, lit by a single flickering bulb. In the reflection of the window, a boy's face was smiling. I still remember the smell that night. Cold air, damp leaves, and something faintly metallic, like rain that never came. My name's Riley Carter, and that Halloween years ago was supposed to be the last one before everything changed. I was 13 then, living in a quiet suburb called Brookvale, a place tucked between pine woods and the lazy bend of a river that never froze. Nothing ever happened there, and that was the strangest thing about it. People said Brookvale was safe, that time moved slower there. They said it with the same tone people use when they're trying to convince themselves. That Halloween night started like any other, but I've replayed it every October since. The way the streetlights hummed, the way the wind carried whispers between the trees, and how, by the time we realized what was happening, it was already too late. I was sitting on my porch steps, watching the light fade over the rooftops. It was 7:42 p.m., the kind of deep blue twilight that makes everything feel half-dreamed. The street smelled like pumpkins and smoke. My bag was empty, my mask loose around my neck, and I was waiting for my friends. There were 4 of us that year: Mason, Tori, Caleb, and me. Mason lived a few blocks over, a restless kid who couldn't keep quiet even when he was scared. Tori was sharp and always had a plan, her witch hat tilted just right. Caleb barely spoke, the kind of calm that made you think nothing could shake him. We weren't supposed to trick-or-treat anymore, not at our age, but Mason had convinced us that one last night wouldn't hurt. He wanted to try Silver Ridge, the rich part of town, where every rumor said they handed out full-size chocolate bars and cans of soda. It was far, though. A long walk past the old water plant and up the hill where the woods began. When they finally showed up, Mason was wearing a plastic skull mask and a hoodie zipped tight. Tori had smudged eyeliner and carried a broom she made out of real twigs. Caleb wore a werewolf mask that looked too real in the dark. I pulled on my cracked white clown mask, the one that looked like it had been smiling too long. "You guys took forever," I said, standing. "Tori was fixing your busted mask strap," Mason said. "Because you broke it last year," she snapped back, rolling her eyes. Caleb's muffled voice came from under his mask, calm as ever. "We should move. Lights will start going out soon." We set off, bags in hand, following the winding streets of our neighborhood. House after house, candy after candy, laughing, talking, breathing in that crisp October air that felt too alive. Kids ran past us in glowing costumes, their voices echoing like ghosts. Nothing seemed wrong, not yet. By the time we reached the foot of Silver Ridge Hill, it was 9:13 p.m. The wind picked up, sharper now, cutting through our jackets. The houses there were bigger, modern, cold, windows reflecting only darkness. "These people are loaded," Mason said, out of breath. "They better have the good stuff." "Focus, greedy," Tori muttered. We climbed higher, our bags getting heavier. Porch after porch, one by one, we scored candy that made the long walk worth it. Big bars, chips, a full soda can that weighed my bag down. But the higher we went, the quieter it got. The laughter faded. The wind carried no music now, just the rustle of leaves. When we turned down the last street, all the porch lights were off except one. The house at the corner had its lights still burning, pale yellow against the night. "Last one," Mason said. "Then we head back." We walked toward it, crunching over the dry leaves. That's when I saw someone walking up the opposite side of the street. He wasn't in costume. No candy bag. Just a dark hoodie pulled up, hands buried in his pockets. Tori noticed too. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Don't look at him." "Why?" Mason asked. "Because it's weird, that's why." But curiosity always won with him. As we passed, the man turned slightly, letting the light hit half his face. His skin looked pale, stretched thin, and his lips were twitching like he was trying not to smile. Something about the way he moved, too still, too aware, made my stomach twist. We kept walking faster. I glanced back once. He was standing under the streetlight, watching. The road curved down toward the woods, where Hollow Bend Trail cut through and led straight back to our side of town. We'd walked it before during the day. At night, it was nothing but a tunnel of black branches. "Let's just take the main road," Tori said quickly. "It's faster through the trail," Mason argued. "Come on, don't be scared," Caleb said softly. "Whatever you choose, I'm fine with it." I hesitated, staring into the trees. The trail looked endless, and the wind carried a low sound like a sigh. "Fine," I said. "But if something jumps out, you're buying me candy for a year." We laughed weakly, pretending not to be nervous. Mason led the way, his phone light swinging in front of him. At first, it was just crunching leaves, faint breath, and the sound of twigs snapping underfoot. But then, behind us, a single crunch that didn't match our steps. We froze. "Please tell me that was one of you," Tori whispered. "Nope," Mason said. "Maybe a raccoon," Caleb muttered, though he turned his flashlight back anyway. "Nothing, just trees." We started walking faster. The air felt heavier now, like the forest was holding its breath. Another crunch. Closer. "That's not an animal," Mason said quietly. I turned around. At the far edge of the light, I saw movement, a shape slipping behind a tree. "Run," Caleb said, barely audible. And we did. We tore down the trail, breath burning, masks slipping, bags hitting our legs. The sound of someone running behind us echoed through the dark, steady and deliberate. My mask slid down my face, blinding me. I ripped it off, gasping. "Left!" Mason shouted. We veered off the path, crashing through bushes. Branches clawed at our clothes. Behind us, a flashlight beam flickered through the trees. He had a light now. We stumbled down a slope, landing near a shallow creek. I almost fell, catching myself on a rock slick with moss. Tori slipped hard, her scream echoing. "Tori, come on!" I grabbed her hand, dragging her up. "I saw him," she panted. "He's right behind us." We crossed the creek, water soaking through our shoes. The beam was still moving behind us, slow, searching, patient. "He's toying with us," Caleb said, voice trembling. We ran until we saw a clearing, an old storage shed, half collapsed, its door hanging loose. "In here," Mason hissed. We crowded inside. The air smelled like rot and old rain. Through a crack in the boards, I could see faint light cutting through the trees. The beam stopped, then turned toward us. I couldn't breathe. The light grew brighter, then clicked off. Darkness swallowed everything. Silence. Minutes passed, or maybe seconds. Then a voice came, low and close, from just behind the shed. "You kids lost?" It wasn't loud, but it felt too near, like he was whispering through the wall. Tori's hand shook as she covered her mouth. Caleb raised a finger to his lips. The voice came again, dragging slow and rough. "I can help you find your way." Then came the sound. Something scraping against the side of the shed, wood creaking under a hand, or a knife. Mason whispered, "We can't stay here." He pointed to the back corner, where a loose plank left a gap just wide enough to crawl through. One by one, we slipped out, crawling through mud. As soon as my feet hit the cold ground, we ran. No lights, no trail, just instinct and fear. Behind us, a door slammed open, echoing through the woods. I don't remember much after that. Just the blur of trees, my lungs screaming, the ground pulling at my legs. When we burst out near the Brookvale High School parking lot, the floodlights hit us like daylight. We stopped, gasping. No sound, no footsteps. Tori was crying silently, shaking so hard her broom snapped in half. Mason leaned over, hands on his knees, staring back toward the tree line. Caleb said quietly, "He stopped once we hit the lights. We didn't speak after that. We just walked home." I didn't tell my mom. None of us did. We just texted each other that night, making sure everyone got home safe. The next morning, I thought maybe it had all been a dream. But when I picked up my shoes, they were still soaked with mud. We met up later that day, sitting at the bus stop, all of us pale and quiet. Mason tried to joke, but it fell flat. Tori finally said, "He didn't follow us home, right?" "Probably some creep from out of town," Caleb said, though his voice shook. We agreed to forget it, but I couldn't. 2 years later, the old woods were cleared. That shed was torn down for new houses. But even now, when I drive past the edge of town late at night, the lights from the new houses never seem to touch the trees. And sometimes, just for a moment, I see him, standing under the branches, head tilted, like he never left. I never liked Halloween after high school. Something about it just stopped feeling magical. Too many fake smiles, too many parties where everyone pretended to be having fun. By the time I reached my mid-20s, October 31st felt like any other night, just colder and emptier. That year, I was living in a small rental house on the edge of Cedar Hollow, Pennsylvania, a quiet town wrapped in woods and mist. My roommate and best friend Lena was the total opposite of me when it came to Halloween. She loved it. Pumpkins on the porch, fake spider webs on the railing, even her phone ringtone was the Halloween theme. She kept a labeled box in the hall closet that said October, things like it was some sacred treasure. We hadn't planned anything big that night. Just cookies, a couple of old horror movies, and the soft comfort of staying inside while the world outside played dress up. The air had that sharp, damp chill that comes when the leaves have turned to copper and the wind smells faintly of rain and earth. "Hey, we're out of frosting," Lena said, leaning over the counter as she arranged the dough. I groaned, tugging my sweater tighter around me. "Right now? It's freezing out there." She gave me that look. The one that always said, "You know you're going anyway." "Fine," I sighed. "But you owe me a coffee run tomorrow." "Deal," she grinned. It was a little past 7:45 p.m. when I pulled into Miller's Market, a tiny grocery store that sat under a flickering streetlight on the corner of Main and Birch. The parking lot was mostly empty except for a few cars and an old gray pickup sitting way in the back. Everything felt too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you turn down your radio just to be sure it's real. Inside, the place was nearly deserted. The only sound was the low hum of the coolers and a faint remix of Thriller playing overhead. I grabbed a basket, heading for the baking aisle. The air smelled faintly of floor polish and sugar, and that's when I saw him. At the far end of the aisle, near the shelves of flour, stood a man, mid-30s maybe, wearing a dark jacket and a black baseball cap. He wasn't looking at the shelves. He was looking at me. I tried to pretend I didn't notice, picking up a can of frosting, my pulse quickening in my throat. When I moved down the aisle, I could feel his eyes following me. Not subtle, not shy, but steady, like a quiet calculation. I forced myself to stay calm, grabbed what I needed, and headed toward the register. The cashier, a bored guy probably in his early 20s, didn't even glance up from his phone as he muttered, "That'll be $3.75. As I handed him the cash, I looked over my shoulder. The man was at the end of the next aisle now, still watching. I didn't run, but I walked fast, the way you do when you know something isn't right, but you're trying not to draw attention to yourself. Outside, the wind felt sharper, almost electric. I locked my car doors the second I got inside. When I glanced into my rearview mirror, I saw him exit the store too. He moved slow, deliberate toward the same gray pickup parked in the back. I told myself not to panic. Not every stare meant danger. But the unease sat deep in my stomach, crawling up my ribs as I started the engine. The drive home should have felt safe. Cedar Hollow was small, mostly long roads lined with oaks and old street lamps that hummed with insects. But halfway down Pine Creek Road, I noticed headlights behind me. Not close enough to tailgate, but close enough to follow. Every time I changed speed, the car did too. Probably just heading the same way, I told myself, though my palms had gone damp on the steering wheel. When I turned onto Cedar Ridge Lane, a dead-end street, the headlights followed. My heart thudded harder with every curve of the road. As I pulled into my driveway, the car behind me slowed to a crawl. The tinted windows hid whoever was inside. For a second, the car idled right in front of my house, then rolled away, disappearing into the dark. Inside, the warmth of the house hit me like relief. Lena was on the couch, scrolling through Netflix, her hair pulled up in a messy bun. "Find the frosting?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, setting the bag on the counter. Then I hesitated. "Hey, this is gonna sound weird, but I think someone followed me home." She frowned, pausing the TV. "What do you mean?" "There was this guy in the store. He kept watching me." Then a car followed me down the street. It slowed down right in front of the house. "Maybe he lives nearby," she said, though her voice didn't sound convinced. Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. We both froze. Lena frowned. "Who the hell?" She stood up slowly, padding toward the door in her socks. The hallway light cast long shadows across the wall as she peeked through the peephole. A few seconds passed. Then she whispered, "There's someone out there." My throat tightened. "Who?" "I don't know," she said, voice shaking. "He's wearing some kind of mask." like a cheap plastic one. "What's he doing?" "Just standing there." "Don't open it," I hissed. "Just ask what he wants." She hesitated, then cracked the door just an inch, the chain still on. "Can I help you?" No answer. "Sir, do you need something?" Still nothing. Then he took one slow step forward. Lena slammed the door shut, locking it, her hands trembling. "He didn't say a word," she whispered. "He just stared right at me through the crack." I moved to the window, pulling the curtain back an inch. The porch was empty now, but across the street, parked under the streetlight, was the same car. We told ourselves it was some idiot playing pranks on Halloween, but deep down I knew it wasn't that. The cookies were half-baked when we heard it. A loud thud from the basement. We froze. Another thud followed, heavier, like someone dragging something across the floor. We didn't store anything down there except a few boxes. No reason for noise. No reason for movement. "Call the cops," I whispered. Lena's hands shook as she dialed. I crept toward the basement door, every instinct screaming at me to stay away. The air felt thick, colder by the door frame. I pressed my ear against it. Footsteps, slow, moving closer. Lena mouthed, "They're on their way." I nodded, barely breathing. For a long moment, there was silence. Then, a soft metallic click, the sound of the basement window latch. "He's inside," I whispered, my voice barely a breath. We ran. Out the front door, barefoot, hearts pounding, straight to my car. I didn't even look back. I drove until I saw the lights of the Cedar Wash laundromat parking under the fluorescent glow. We waited there, shaking, until the police lights finally appeared. When they searched the house, they found the small basement window broken open, muddy footprints on the floor leading up to the first step, then stopping, as if whoever it was had heard us leave. He was gone. The car was gone too. The cops told us to stay somewhere else for the night. We crashed at a friend's apartment, too wired to sleep. The next morning, when we went back to collect our things, there were new footprints on the back porch. Wet, muddy, circling the house like whoever it was had come back after the police left. We moved out 2 weeks later. But that wasn't the end. A month after we'd settled into a new place, I got an email from an unknown address. No message, no subject line, just a link. When I clicked it, my blood ran cold. It was a fake dating profile, mine, same name, same town. But the pictures weren't real. They were AI-generated versions of me, naked in explicit poses. Underneath were messages from strangers, disgusting, violent things. Then came another email. A message that read, "Pay me in crypto, or everyone you know sees this." Attached was an audio file. When I played it, my own voice came out of the speaker, whispering things I never said. Horrible, hateful things about Lena. About myself. I deleted the file, shaking so badly I could barely breathe. I called the police again, but the number was untraceable. They told me deepfakes were getting more advanced. They told me there wasn't much they could do. That night, I sat awake, every creak of the house making my heart race. When I glanced out the window, across the street, under the lamplight, I saw it again, a dark car, parked, waiting. The same shape, the same distance. It stayed there until dawn, engine silent, windows black. When the sun rose, it was gone. And I still don't know what was worse, the thought that it was him again, or the thought that it was never just one person to begin with. Because sometimes, when I get voice messages late at night, I hear my own voice whisper back from the other end, saying things I never said, and I can't tell anymore if someone's watching me or if they're already inside. I remember that night like a bruise on my mind, dark and aching, impossible to forget. It began the week before Halloween. I had taken a small trip to clear my head, just a weekend away from the noise of the city. I booked a quiet hotel on the edge of a mountain town in northern Vermont called Ashwick Hollow. It was the kind of place that looked like a postcard, maple trees bleeding orange and gold, smoke rising from old chimneys, air that smelled of pine and burning leaves. But beneath that beauty, there was something heavy, something I couldn't name. I'm Juliana, 32, a freelance video editor. I work mostly from home, editing YouTube documentaries, old true crime reels, and sometimes low-budget horror shorts for indie filmmakers. My world is full of screens, sound, and silence, which can be a dangerous mix when you live alone. I'd been burned out lately, exhausted from deadlines, long nights, and the constant hum of the city. So when I saw a cabin-style hotel called the Hollow View Inn listed online with good reviews and a Halloween discount, I booked it without thinking twice. The drive up took 6 hours. By the time I reached the town, it was dusk, the sun slipping behind the hills like it was afraid of what came after. I remember the way the inn looked. 2 floors of old timber, a porch full of creaky rocking chairs, jack-o'-lanterns glowing weakly in the cold wind. The front sign said, "Welcome to the Hollow View," in letters half chipped away. Inside, the front desk smelled like cinnamon and dust. A man in his late 50s sat behind the counter, his name tag reading Dale. He gave me a polite smile, but his eyes were shadowed, distant. "You're the only guest tonight," he said. The storm scared most folks away. I laughed softly. "Perfect for a horror movie, huh?" He didn't laugh back. Just slid the old brass key across the counter and said, "Room 12, second floor. Oh, and don't mind the smoke detectors." They're new. I didn't think much of that at the time. The hallways were narrow and carpeted, lined with faded photos of the town's early days. Black and white faces stared from behind cracked glass, their expressions too serious, their eyes following me as I walked. When I reached my room, I paused for a moment before unlocking the door. It felt like the air was waiting. The room was small but cozy. A queen bed, wooden dresser, small bathroom, and a single window looking out toward the forest. The wallpaper peeled in the corners, and the heater rattled like teeth chattering. I unpacked, made some instant coffee, and sat on the bed scrolling through my phone. That's when I noticed the smoke detector. It hung above the bathroom door, its red light blinking every few seconds. I stared at it, something about the angle feeling off. It wasn't centered. It was pointing slightly downward, toward the shower. I told myself not to be paranoid. I'd seen too many creepy videos about hidden cameras and hotel horror stories. Still, curiosity got me. I pulled up my phone's flashlight and shined it at the detector. Inside the vented holes, I caught a tiny glint of glass, a lens. My heart sank. I grabbed a chair, climbed up, and twisted the detector off the ceiling. The wires were fake, just a hollow shell, glued in place. Inside was a small black device with a blinking green light. A camera. Someone had been watching. I froze for a full minute just listening. No sound. No footsteps. The silence pressed around me until my pulse felt too loud. Then I pulled the device apart and stuffed it in my bag. I went to the front desk, heart hammering. Dale was gone. Only a note sat on the counter, back in the morning. Emergency calls only. It was already past 9:45 p.m. The wind outside howled through the trees. I decided I'd leave in the morning, first light. I locked the door, shoved a chair under the handle, and tried to distract myself with my laptop. But when I opened it, there was a message waiting on my screen, a notification from a streaming site I'd never heard of. It said, "Your live session has ended. I never started any session." I clicked it, and my stomach twisted. The thumbnail showed my hotel room. The exact angle of the camera above the bathroom door. The title read, "Girl Alone at the Hollow View, lived 3 hours ago." I slammed the laptop shut. I unplugged everything, turned off the lights, and sat on the floor beside the bed, shaking. Who was watching me? How long had that been streaming? At some point, exhaustion won over fear, and I drifted off against the wall. When I woke, it was still dark. I checked the time, 2:17 a.m. The wind had stopped. Everything was too quiet. Then came a sound. A soft click, like a door latch easing open. I held my breath. The chair I'd placed under the handle moved an inch. Someone was on the other side, trying to get in slow, careful, deliberate. I didn't speak. I didn't even blink. The sound stopped. Then I heard it, a faint whisper through the door, too low to make out. I pressed my ear against the wood, and I swear I heard breathing. Something brushed against the door, and I saw the handle twitch again. Then footsteps, retreating down the hall. When dawn finally came, I packed fast and ran down to my car. I didn't even check out, but as I drove out of the lot, I saw something that made my skin crawl. Every window on the second floor had a figure standing behind it, silhouettes perfectly still, like mannequins watching me go. I didn't look back. I drove until I hit the next town, parked at a diner, and finally got a signal on my phone. My inbox was full, hundreds of messages from strangers. Some were laughing, some were asking if I was okay, others just sent screenshots. Every message linked to that same stream of me, in that room, unaware. Someone had uploaded it everywhere. When I tried to report it, the link was gone. Deleted, like it never existed. That night, I stayed in a cheap motel off the highway. I checked every corner, every vent, every light. Nothing. But around midnight, I got a text from an unknown number. "You look better when you're scared. No name, no image." I blocked it. Then another message appeared from a different number with a photo of me taken from behind, sitting at the diner that morning. They knew where I'd been. I didn't sleep that night. I sat against the door, clutching my phone, waiting for morning. When I finally got back home, I called the police. They said they'd investigate, but weeks passed with no answers. The Hollowview Inn, I was told, had shut down suddenly. The owner, Dale, was missing. They found the building empty, rooms gutted, furniture gone. But that wasn't the end. A few days later, my face started showing up on fake missing posters online. My real name, my real number. Missing since October 28th, last seen in Ashwick Hollow. People started calling, texting, harassing me. Some said they'd seen me on the stream. Some sent threats. I changed my number. I moved apartments. I even deleted all my social media. But the night before Halloween this year, I got another package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a small, cracked smoke detector and a note. "Smile for the camera, Juliana." I dropped it, heart pounding. It wasn't the same model as before. This one had something carved on the back, 3 words scratched into the plastic. "Still watching you." That night, I unplugged everything in my apartment, the TV, laptop, Wi-Fi, everything. But when I passed my hallway mirror, something made me stop. Behind me, in the reflection, the red light of a tiny camera blinked once. Then again. I turned slowly, eyes scanning the ceiling, the corners, the shadows. Nothing, just darkness. But the blinking didn't stop. And when I covered the mirror with a blanket, I could still hear the faint sound of static, like a live feed quietly running somewhere I couldn't see. I tried to tell myself it was in my head. That fear was just replaying itself like one of my edits. But deep down, I knew better. Whoever they were, they'd never stopped watching. Sometimes late at night, when the world feels too still, I swear I hear the faint click of a camera lens adjusting in the dark. And every Halloween, around 7:45 p.m., I get a single text message, "Smile." I remember the knock first. Soft, uncertain, but heavy enough to make my chest tighten. It was the kind of sound that didn't belong on a quiet night, not in a town like mine, not on Halloween. I've never been the kind of person who went overboard with decorations or parties. No glowing skeletons in the yard, no fog machines, no speakers blaring ghost noises. Just me, a small bowl of candy, and whatever late-night horror marathon the networks threw together for the season. I'm 34 now, and I live alone in a small rental house at the edge of a sleepy neighborhood called Birch Hollow, tucked just outside Ashford, Washington. It's the kind of place people pass through without remembering the name, where the air always smells faintly like pine and rain. I moved there about a year before that night. I was tired of city life, tired of noise, tired of everything moving too fast. I've been working remote tech support for a small software company, and all I wanted was peace. Birch Hollow gave me that. Cheap rent, quiet nights, the kind of silence that helps you sleep deeper. Halloween, to me, was just another Thursday night with extra footsteps outside. I'd hand out candy from 6:30 until about 8, maybe 8:30. Then I'd lock up, crack open a beer, and fall into the couch with a movie. Simple, predictable, safe. That night started exactly like that. The kids came in waves, little monsters, princesses, and superheroes, their laughter echoing under the streetlights while parents waited by the curb with flashlights in hand. I'd gone cheap on the decorations again. 3 carved pumpkins on the porch, fake cobwebs clinging to the banister, and a small motion sensor ghost that moaned whenever someone stepped too close. It was enough to look festive, but not enough to make me seem overly eager. Around 9, things started slowing down. I could see porch lights going dark one by one down the street, the unspoken neighborhood signal that the candy run was over. By 9:30, I figured I'd seen the last of them. I remember standing by my door, half-finished beer in one hand, candy bowl in the other, looking down the road at the empty sidewalks. The street looked strangely hollow when it got that quiet. No chatter, no crunch of plastic candy bags, just the sound of wind dragging leaves across asphalt. I turned off my porch light, set the candy bowl aside, and headed for the couch. The TV was already tuned to one of those old horror movie marathons. I think it was The Thing. I was halfway through lowering myself into the couch when I heard the knock. 3 sharp raps. At first, I thought maybe I'd accidentally left the porch light on again, and some latecomers thought I was still open for candy. I sighed, got up, grabbed the candy bowl, and opened the door. It wasn't a kid. It was a man. He looked to be in his late 40s, maybe early 50s. Tall, pale, thin to the point of looking sick. His clothes were dark, just jeans and a black windbreaker. But what hit me first was his expression. Blank. Completely blank, like someone had forgotten to turn on the light behind his eyes. I hesitated, holding the candy bowl like a shield. Hey, you out kinda late, huh? He didn't answer. His gaze wasn't even on me. It flicked past my shoulder into the hallway behind me. Then he spoke, voice low and flat, almost robotic. Is Aiden here? I blinked. Aiden? He nodded once, slow. Sorry, I said carefully. No one named Aiden lives here. He just kept staring past me. His eyes looked like they were focusing on something deep inside my house. I could feel goosebumps crawl up my arms. Who's Aiden? I asked. Your kid? The man nodded again. He was trick-or-treating. I lost him. He said it in a way that didn't sound like grief or panic, more like he was reading a line from a book. That's awful, I said, trying to sound calm. Maybe he went to another house. There are families 2 streets over. The man interrupted, whispering something almost to himself. He was wearing a red mask. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. Not hurriedly, just walked, his dark figure fading into the night. I stood frozen for a few seconds, unsure whether to follow or shut the door. Something about the way he said it, that hollow, disconnected tone, it didn't sit right. I closed the door and locked it. Then I peered through the peephole, but he was gone. I called the non-emergency police line. Hey, not sure if this is important, I told the dispatcher, but some guy came to my house looking for his kid. Said his name was Aiden. Said he lost him while trick-or-treating. He seemed off. They took my address and said they'd send a patrol car through the neighborhood just in case. But unless someone actually filed a missing child report, there wasn't much they could do. I hung up and stood by the window, watching the street. Nothing. Just stillness. I tried to shake it off, sat back down, and turned up the TV volume. For a while, I actually managed to lose myself in the movie. Maybe the guy was just confused. Maybe Aiden was home by now. By the time the credits rolled, it was past 11. The neighborhood was blacked out. Not a single porch light, not even a car passing by. I got up to clean the empty candy bowl, locked the front door, and went to close the living room blinds. That's when I saw it. A faint reflection. Or maybe a shadow. Someone was standing outside. My first thought was that it was just my reflection in the glass, but when I leaned closer, the figure shifted. I froze. Then it was gone, vanished into the darkness. I stood there, pulse pounding in my ears, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. Then my eyes caught something else. The side gate leading to my backyard was wide open. I never left that gate open. I backed away from the window, my hands shaking as I grabbed my phone again. I dialed 911. Before I could even finish explaining, a loud crack shattered the silence. The front window exploded inward with a sharp, splintering sound. Glass flew across the floor. I dropped the phone, heart hammering. For one brief, nightmarish instant, I saw a pale face in the shards, half hidden by darkness, but unmistakably human. Then it disappeared. "Hey!" I yelled, voice trembling. "Get the hell out of here." I snatched up the fireplace poker and ran toward the back door, flipping the porch light on. Just as I did, I saw movement near the fence, a tall figure running along the side of the house. I slammed the lock, backed into the hallway, breath shallow. The dispatcher's voice came faintly from the dropped phone. "Sir, are you safe?" "Stay inside. Officers are on the way." Those next 10 minutes felt like hours. When the police finally arrived, I nearly ran outside to meet them. They searched the yard, the street, even checked behind the garbage bins and sheds, but the man, or whatever he was, had vanished. One of the officers crouched near the broken window, shining a flashlight across the floor. Something glinted. He picked it up. A rock, smooth and rounded, wrapped in a torn piece of red fabric. "Looks like it came off a costume," he said, frowning. "Maybe a mask." The words hit me like a punch, a red mask. The man's voice echoed in my head. He was wearing a red mask. The police couldn't find anyone matching the description. No one named Aiden was reported missing. No footprints, no clues, nothing. For days, I barely slept. Every creak in the house sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind felt like breathing against the window. I even installed cameras outside, one covering the porch, one aimed at the backyard. But they never caught anything. A week later, one of the officers called me. He said, "You know, this is strange. We had a similar call last year. A man going door to door late on Halloween night asking for his son. Said his name was Aiden. No missing child report that time either." I didn't know what to say. My throat went dry. The next night, I went through the camera footage again, frame by frame. Most of it was empty, but around 11:30, right before the glass shattered, there was one still frame that made my stomach turn. A small figure standing behind the man in the yard, child-sized, wearing something red on its face. After that, I stopped handing out candy. Now, every Halloween, I shut all the blinds before dark. I turn off the porch light, keep the TV low, and pretend the world outside doesn't exist. But sometimes, when the wind scrapes the trees against the roof just right, I swear I can hear it again. That slow, hollow knock on my door. And even though I tell myself it's just the wind, I never go near the window. Because once, last October, just as I was heading to bed around 2:17 a.m., I caught a glimpse in the mirror. For a heartbeat, I thought my reflection was still wearing the Halloween makeup I hadn't put on. Its face was pale, eyes dark, lips moving in silence. And behind it, just over my shoulder, something small and red blinked once and faded. I don't know what happened to Aiden, or his father, or the thing pretending to be them. But I do know one thing. Every Halloween night, somewhere in Birch Hollow, a stranger still leaves a pumpkin on my porch. The same words carved into it every year. "I remember what you did." And by morning, when the first rays of sun hit the porch, the pumpkin skin looks wrong, soft, almost like flesh. And sometimes, when the light hits just right, you can see faint ridges beneath the surface, like fingerprints pressed too deep. I haven't touched one since, but I think this year it's coming inside whether I want it to or not. Because last night, when I went to lock the door, there was a mask sitting on my doormat, red, half melted. And when I picked it up, the inside wasn't plastic. It felt like skin. I still can't shake what happened that Halloween night. Even now, years later, I lock every door twice, peek through the curtains before bed, and keep the porch lights off no matter what day it is. My name's Wesley, and I'm not the kind of guy who believes in ghosts or curses, but something changed in me that night. I used to think the world was predictable, safe, explainable. I don't think that anymore. It started on a cool October evening in the small town of Ravens Hollow, Ohio, a place where every street looked like a postcard during fall. Maple leaves covered lawns like red confetti, and the air smelled of cinnamon and wood smoke. My wife Hannah and I had lived there for almost 7 years. We bought a cozy 2-story house on the corner of Hollow Creek Road, right beside the woods that everyone in town said were a little off. People said weird things happened there. Lights, voices, shadows that moved where no one should have been. I never paid much attention. Back then, our son, Dean, had just turned 6. He was obsessed with superheroes, especially Spider-Man. He wore that bright red and blue suit for weeks before Halloween, climbing furniture, jumping off the couch, and pretending to shoot webs at me and Hannah. It was harmless fun, the kind of thing every parent loves to watch. That year, I remember thinking how peaceful life felt. I had a stable job at the auto plant, Hannah worked part-time at the library, and Dean was happy, healthy, and full of energy. But peace doesn't last long in stories like mine. Halloween that night started like any other. The streets buzzed with laughter, porch lights glowed orange, and kids in costumes darted from door to door, yelling, "Trick or treat." Hannah and I walked behind Dean, our hands in our pockets, smiling as he ran up to every porch like it was the first one he'd ever seen. After about 2 hours, he slowed down. His little feet dragged, and his mask had slipped sideways, half covering his eyes. "You about ready to head home, champ?" I asked. He nodded, tired but still smiling. "Can I do one more house?" Hannah gave me that soft look, the kind that says just one more, please. I laughed. "All right, one more." Then we head back. That one more house was a small blue bungalow near the end of the block, the kind with paper ghosts in the windows and fake cobwebs draped over the porch rail. Dean trotted up, shouted his line, and came running back with a handful of candy like he'd struck gold. We got home around 9:45 p.m. The air had that sharp, cold bite that hinted winter wasn't far away. Hannah had left a bowl of candy on our porch with a little handwritten note that said, "Take one." Of course, when we returned, the bowl was empty. "Figures," she said with a smirk. Someone couldn't resist. "Probably the vampire kid from next door," I joked. Inside, the house was warm and glowing. The scent of pumpkin candles filled the air, fake spider webs hung across the mantel, and soft orange lights blinked in the kitchen window. Dean dumped his candy on the rug, sorting it like treasure. Hannah poured herself a small glass of wine while I kicked off my shoes, just soaking in the moment. It felt safe. It felt right. Then the doorbell rang. It startled me, not because of the sound, but because it was so late. I glanced at the clock. 10:14 p.m. "Who's still out this late?" Hannah muttered, looking up from her phone. "Probably a couple stragglers," I said, heading to the door. When I opened it, 2 figures stood on the porch, a tall man in a faded plaid jacket and a little boy about Dean's age wearing a torn Spider-Man costume. For a second, I thought maybe it was one of Dean's classmates, but I didn't recognize either of them. The porch light flickered, making their faces flash in and out of shadow. "Evening," the man said, his voice polite but tired. "Sorry to bother you. My boy really needs to use the bathroom. We've been walking for a while, and it's a long way back to our place." The kid shifted from foot to foot, clutching his stomach. He looked uncomfortable, maybe scared. I hesitated. Letting strangers inside didn't feel right. Hannah had stood up now, giving me that silent "don't you dare" glare from the living room. But the boy looked desperate, and something in me, maybe just being a dad, couldn't ignore that. "Down the hall," I said finally. "First door on your left." The boy bolted inside before I could finish, shoes squeaking on the wood floor. The man smiled awkwardly. "Thank you," he said. "He's been holding it since Main Street." "No problem," I replied, though my stomach twisted a little. He stepped just inside the entryway, not too far, but enough for me to notice how his eyes moved around the room. They lingered on Dean. That bothered me. After about a minute, the kid ran back, his mask still crooked. "All done, Dad," he said softly. "All right," the man replied, smiling again. "Say thank you." "Thanks," the boy mumbled. "Here," I said, handing him a few pieces of candy from Dean's stash. "Happy Halloween." The man nodded, turned, and they disappeared down the sidewalk. I watched until they turned the corner and vanished into the dark. Hannah exhaled. "I don't like that, Wes." "I know," I said quietly. "It's fine." "They're gone." The night carried on like nothing happened. We cleaned up, tucked Dean in, and turned off the lights. By midnight, the house was silent except for the faint rustle of leaves outside. I must have drifted off sometime around 1:15 a.m. But at exactly 2:17 a.m., a scream tore through the house. "Dad!" I bolted upright, heart pounding. Hannah gasped beside me, reaching for her phone. "Dean!" I shouted, leaping out of bed. He was standing in the hallway crying, pointing toward his room. "There's a man," he sobbed. He was in my window. My blood ran cold. I sprinted past him into his room. The window was wide open, curtains whipping in the cold wind, and there, halfway out, was a figure. The same man. "Hey!" I shouted, lunging forward. He dropped to the ground outside and took off across the yard. I chased after him barefoot, the gravel biting into my feet. I could see the glint of that plaid jacket just before he disappeared into the woods behind our fence. I stopped at the edge, chest heaving. The night swallowed him whole. Hannah rushed out, clutching Dean tight, both of them terrified. "What happened?" she screamed. "It was him," I said breathlessly. "The man from earlier." We called the police. Within minutes, red and blue lights painted the walls. Officers searched the woods, dusted the window for prints, asked endless questions, but the man was gone. That night, none of us slept. Dean stayed between us, trembling every time a branch scraped against the glass. I kept replaying it in my head, his eyes, that fake smile, the way he looked at my son. The next few days blurred together. I added new locks, cameras, motion lights, anything that could help me sleep again. Then, 3 days later, my phone rang. "Mr. Hale?" a man said on the line. "This is Detective Langley from the county sheriff's office. We caught the man." I nearly dropped the phone. He explained that the man wasn't from Ravens Hollow at all. He was a drifter who moved between small towns, renting rooms, staying in motels. And the boy? He wasn't his son. He'd been missing for over a year, taken from a town 3 hours away during a summer fair. The man had been using him as cover, pretending to be a father trick-or-treating. My stomach turned. They found the boy safe and reunited him with his family. But the detective said something that still chills me. When we arrested him, he said, he kept asking if we'd check the photos. "What photos?" I asked. Inside his motel room, there were dozens. Families mostly, sleeping. Through their windows. After that call, I tore apart my house looking for cameras, hidden lenses, anything. That night, Hannah found something new, a photo frame on our hallway wall that hadn't been there before. Inside the frame was a picture of us, me, Hannah, and Dean, asleep in our bed. It was taken from inside the room. We moved a month later. New town, new start. I thought distance might help, but some things follow you whether you believe it or not. Every Halloween since, I keep the lights off. No candy, no decorations. Hannah says I'm being paranoid, but I can't shake the feeling that he's still out there. Because sometimes, late at night, when the wind hits the glass just right, I hear it again. That faint tap, tap, tap like fingers brushing against the window. And once, just once, I looked. In the reflection, I saw my own face staring back at me, only younger. And when I froze, it smiled on its own. I never thought Halloween could feel alive in a way that made my skin crawl, but that night, everything changed. My name is Tessa, and I was 17, living in a quiet Pennsylvania town called Black Hollow. Surrounded by dense woods and forgotten fields, it was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business, yet secrets lingered in shadows. Halloween had always been magical as a kid, full of candy, costumes, and the thrill of running door to door. By high school, it had shifted. It became this strange, in-between time, too old for trick-or-treating, too young for real parties. That year, I wanted something different, something thrilling, something that made my heart pound. My closest friends, Riley, Carson, and Mia, were the kind who thrived on mischief. Riley was the loud, reckless one, always daring someone to do something stupid. Carson was the quiet observer, calculating and careful, yet secretly adventurous when no one was watching. Mia, she was chaos in human form, unpredictable and magnetic, the type of friend you followed even when your instincts screamed stop. That Monday night, none of us had school the next day, but that didn't matter. We wanted fear. Riley had first suggested something wild. He had spoken to Lucas, whose older brother Devin had access to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. There would be a fire, some older teens, maybe alcohol. My stomach flipped. I had imagined Halloween scares before, but this felt raw and real. Devin was older, tattooed, reckless, the kind of person everyone whispered about but secretly admired. But before I could leave, my mother reminded me I had responsibilities. I had to take my younger sister, Leela, around the neighborhood for 1 hour. I groaned, but she made it clear there would be no arguing. I led Lila through the streets, the autumn air smelling of fallen leaves and distant smoke, street lights casting long shadows. By the time I returned, it was already past 8:50 p.m., and the warehouse loomed ahead, dark and foreboding, rusted metal glinting faintly in the light. Riley, Carson, and Mia were crouched by a small fire. Smoke curled into the night, carrying the scent of cheap cider and wet wood. Music trickled from a phone speaker, low and eerie, barely audible over the wind. The warehouse itself was like a sleeping monster, walls covered in graffiti, windows shattered, doors hanging crooked on broken hinges. The air felt heavy, watching, almost alive. Riley waved me over. "Late, huh?" he said, smirking. I explained about Lila, hoping for understanding. Devin leaned against the wall, smirk on his face. "You'll get the stash," he said, "inside." "Don't worry, we'll keep the fire." I hesitated. The warehouse smelled of mold, mildew, and something sour, like rot hidden beneath layers of dust. Floorboards groaned under my weight. Shadows seemed to stretch and move with me. Then I heard it, a shuffle from the back hallway. My heart jumped. A figure limped into view. Devin, his face pale, eyes wide. "Help me," he gasped. Before I could react, something yanked him backward into darkness. He screamed. Instinct kicked in. I ran, tripping over debris, flashlight bouncing wildly. I burst back to the fire, where Riley's laughter cut short at my expression. "Something's wrong," I shouted. "Devin, someone grabbed him." The group froze. The playful danger we'd sought became real, and suddenly, the air was colder, heavier, full of unseen eyes. We approached the warehouse together, flashlights trembling. Broken furniture, shattered glass, and graffiti surrounded us. Then the sound came, a low, guttural groan, not part of a prank, real and horrifying. Carson's flashlight revealed Devin, bloodied, breathing ragged, eyes wide with panic. He had been attacked, someone hiding there, protecting their stash or territory. We carried him out, adrenaline pounding. When police arrived, statements were taken, but the fear lingered. Weeks later, I couldn't pass the warehouse without my pulse spiking. Every Halloween, the smell of damp wood and smoke dragged me back to that night, to Devin's scream, to the raw terror of real fear. But the horrors didn't end. Weeks later, at the town festival, someone installed a Halloween animatronic, a clown with glowing red eyes. They unplugged it for maintenance, but it moved on its own, wires untouched, swiveled and creaked as though alive. Then came the haunted house in the Miller mansion. Ghostly moans had been recorded for effect, but when technicians checked, they found real voices trapped in walls, someone living there, whispering from inside. The memory that haunts me most is Miss Callahan handing out candy. Every child's costume had her face, each mask perfectly replicated, staring back with wide, empty eyes mocking her, impossibly accurate. Even now, I avoid abandoned places, check doors twice, never underestimate the dark. That Halloween taught me that fear isn't a story you tell. It's alive, patient, and sometimes it watches you back, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The warehouse haunted me for months. Every sound, the snap of a twig, the rustle of leaves, even the hum of a streetlight, felt like it was hiding something. Carson became quieter, jumpy, and Mia joked less, her eyes constantly scanning shadows. Riley seemed unaffected on the surface, but I saw the tension in his hands, the way he flinched at sudden noises. One night, I couldn't sleep. The memory of Devin screaming in the dark pulled into the shadows. played on repeat in my head. I convinced myself to go back to the warehouse, rationalizing that I just wanted to see it in daylight, empty and harmless. By day, it was worse. The warehouse loomed like a predator, shadows curling in places no light reached. Broken windows reflected the sun in unnatural ways, and weeds grew taller than I remembered, almost as if the place had grown while I wasn't looking. Inside, I saw scratches on walls, footprints in dust, the smell of decay still strong. Something moved at the edge of my vision, quick and silent. I called out, my voice trembling, but only the wind responded. I felt it then, the cold gaze of something unseen, and I ran, tripping over debris, my flashlight shaking in my hands. Over the next few weeks, strange things escalated. I noticed shadows that didn't belong, noises in the walls like whispers, items moving in my room. One night, I heard soft footsteps outside my window. I looked, but only saw empty streets, swaying trees, and the faint orange glow of distant porch lights. Then came the second Halloween twist. The town set up a new haunted maze at the fairground. One of the props, a skeleton hanging from chains, moved on its own. Security cameras showed it swinging without wind or human interference. People screamed, thinking it was a prank, but no one touched it. The air in the maze felt colder than the autumn night, like the building itself exhaled something dark. My friends and I tried to rationalize. Maybe it was wind, maybe mechanical failure, maybe coincidence. But every incident mirrored the night Devon was attacked. Darkness, shadows, fear that could be felt, not just imagined. Months later, a story spread of children wearing masks of a neighbor's face. Ms. Callahan's face appeared on every costume at the school parade. Everyone laughed nervously, but the horror in her eyes told a different story. I couldn't stop thinking about that, how something as innocent as Halloween had twisted into something horrifying, something personal. By the time I graduated high school, Halloween wasn't fun anymore. It was a cautionary tale, a reminder that fear isn't contained in stories. It lingers, watching, and waits for moments when you least expect it. Shadows are alive, sounds have intent, and even laughter can mask terror. Even now, I avoid abandoned buildings. I avoid Halloween attractions. I check locks twice. The smell of smoke, cider, or damp wood makes me shiver. I hear whispers in walls, footsteps behind me, shadows moving just out of sight. Halloween taught me that fear has a life of its own. It's patient, it's cunning, and sometimes it's waiting for me. I can still remember every detail of that night. The firelight, Devon's scream, the warehouse's smell, the dark that seemed to press on my skin. Every Halloween since, I passed the streets carefully, my heartbeat loud in my ears, my eyes scanning corners, expecting to see something move, something watching. That night didn't just scare me. It changed how I see the world, and I know it will follow me, always. The warehouse, the haunted house, the animatronic clown, the masks. Every element reminds me of that moment when fear became real. It's not a memory you forget. It's a shadow that grows with every passing year, feeding on doubt, curiosity, and the thrill of the unknown. Even today, when I see a group of teenagers daring each other to explore abandoned places, I want to warn them. I want to scream, telling them that the darkness isn't empty, that the shadows move, that fear waits, but they won't listen. They never do. And sometimes, I wonder, maybe it's better that way. Because fear, once tasted, never truly leaves you. It waits, patient and silent, and sometimes, when you think you're safe, it reaches out from the shadows and reminds you why you should never underestimate the dark. My name is Sienna, and I never believed in curses or ghosts until the night Halloween stopped being a game. It's strange how one night can change the way you see the world, how shadows stop being empty and silence becomes something alive. I wish I could say I imagined it all, but I still wake up hearing that sound in my head, the low creak of wood, the soft shuffle of something moving when no one should be there. I grew up in a small town in Oregon called Hollowbrook, quiet and cold, tucked between pine forests and fog-covered hills. By the time I left for college, I thought I had escaped the stillness of that place, but my first Halloween away from home brought it all back. It was my freshman year at a university near Portland. Back then, I was just another kid trying to figure out who I was, living in a tiny dorm room that always smelled like burnt popcorn and air freshener. I missed home but didn't want to admit it, not to anyone. Halloween that year landed on a Saturday, and the campus was already buzzing by sunset. Music poured from every building, and people in ridiculous costumes ran through the streets like a parade of noise. I wasn't really a party person, but staying in alone felt worse. So when my friend Mariah said there was a house party near the old part of town, I decided to go. I dressed up as a detective, cheap coat, fake badge, flashlight clipped to my belt, and left my dorm around 7:45 p.m. The air smelled of rain and burning leaves. My shoes crunched against the gravel, and I remember thinking how different Halloween felt now that I wasn't a kid. No candy, no laughter, just a hint of something darker beneath the excitement. The bar near campus was overflowing with people, and the line stretched down the block. Mariah texted that she was already inside with her boyfriend, and that I should meet another friend of hers, Carter, who knew about a quieter party a few blocks away on a street called Waverly Hollow. When I looked it up, I saw almost nothing. No businesses, no traffic, just a narrow road lined with old wooden houses and dying trees. Still, I told her I'd go. I didn't want to seem boring. I met Carter outside the corner store. He was tall, wearing a skeleton hoodie and holding 2 cups of cider. "You must be Sienna," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He told me his friends were already waiting at the Waverly house, said it was going to be chill, nothing wild. We walked together talking about nothing, the kind of small talk that fills silence when you don't know someone well. The deeper we went into Waverly Hollow, the quieter it got. Streetlights flickered above us, and the wind carried bits of paper and dry leaves down the road like whispers. Finally, we reached a house at the end of the street. It was old, 2 stories, paint peeling from the sides. A single carved pumpkin sat on the porch, its candle flickering weakly. Carter grinned and said, "Guess they already started decorating." When I looked closer, the pumpkin had a strange face. Not happy, not scary, just blank, with hollow eyes staring straight ahead. For some reason, it made my stomach twist. Carter knocked on the door. A moment later, it opened just a crack. A man with messy hair and tired eyes stood there. He looked maybe mid-20s, wearing a faded hoodie. "You guys here for the party?" he asked, in a dull voice. "Yeah," Carter said. The guy nodded slowly and muttered, "Shoes off inside, okay?" Before disappearing into the shadows. The moment we stepped in, the air changed. It smelled like dust and something metallic. The floorboards creaked, and the house felt too still, too empty. There were shoes piled by the wall, dozens of them, but not a single voice, not a laugh, not even music. I whispered, "Is this the right place?" Carter frowned and shrugged. "Maybe everyone's out back." We walked deeper into the house. The hallway was narrow, the wallpaper faded and peeling. A small light flickered from a nearby room. We followed it and found a speaker on the floor, playing low static. Not music, just static. Then I heard it. Footsteps from behind us. Heavy, deliberate, getting closer. I turned, but Carter spoke first. "Hey man." "That you?" 2 figures stepped from the shadows, both wearing masks. Not Halloween masks, black ski masks. One held a baseball bat. The other had a flashlight shining right at our faces. Phones. Wallets. Now, Carter froze, and I could feel my pulse racing in my throat. The taller one moved closer, the bat tapping lightly against his leg. Carter tried to talk, but the man barked. "Move to the kitchen." We did. The floor creaked with every step. My heart felt like it was tearing through my chest. The kitchen was dim, a single bulb swinging slightly overhead. There was a table, a single chair, and a door that led down into a dark basement, cracked open just enough to breathe out cold air. The man pointed at the stairs. "Down there." Carter stammered. "Look, man, we don't have anything. We just came for..." The man slammed his bat against the fridge. The metallic bang echoed through the room, sharp and violent. I flinched so hard my knees nearly gave out. Something in me snapped. "Run," Carter whispered. Before I could react, he bolted for the back door. I followed without thinking. The men shouted. Something hit my shoulder, sending pain shooting down my arm. But I didn't stop. We burst through the back door, the cold air slicing into our lungs. I could hear footsteps chasing us, the sound of wood cracking and boots pounding on the wet grass. We sprinted down the yard, through a broken fence, into the alley behind the house. I slipped, fell hard, then scrambled up again. Carter grabbed my hand and pulled me forward. We didn't stop until the lights of campus came into view. We collapsed near the library parking lot, gasping, shaking. My arm throbbed and my jacket was torn. Carter kept saying, "What the hell was that?" Who were they? We called the police from his phone. They came maybe 15 minutes later, blue and red lights cutting through the fog. We gave them the address. They listened, exchanged looks, and then drove toward Waverly Hollow. When they came back, one officer looked pale. "That house has been empty for years," she said. "Nobody lives there. Windows boarded up, no power." I stared at her, my mouth dry. But there was a man. He let us in. He said, "Shoes off." She shook her head. We checked. No one there. The next day, Carter and I went back in daylight. The house stood exactly as it had before, but the pumpkin was gone. The porch was covered in a thin layer of frost, and when I looked through the cracked window, I could swear I saw something move inside, just a flicker. A week later, I started having nightmares. I'd wake up to see a carved pumpkin glowing faintly at the foot of my bed, flickering as if someone had just lit it. Every time I blinked, it disappeared, leaving only the smell of smoke. One night, I got a message on my phone from an unknown number. It said, "Dig here for the rest." Attached was a photo of a small wooden cross in the ground, right in front of that same house. I didn't go. I couldn't. But Carter did. He said he needed closure. He texted me that he was on his way there around 2:17 a.m. I waited for him to text back. He never did. The next morning, the police found his car parked near Waverly Hollow, door open, key still in the ignition. They searched the area for days but never found him. Now, years later, I still live with that night in my head. I still hear the echo of that bat hitting the fridge, the sound that ripped the world open. Sometimes I dream that I'm back there, in that narrow hallway, walking toward the kitchen again. The house feels alive in my dreams, breathing, waiting. Last Halloween, I walked past the end of Waverly Hollow again. I don't know why, I guess I needed to see it. The house is still there, boarded up, covered in ivy. But someone left a pumpkin on the porch, its face carved in that same blank stare. The candle inside flickered weakly, just like before. And as I turned to leave, I swear I heard it, music, faint and distant, coming from inside that empty house. But what chilled me most wasn't the sound. It was the faint shape in the upstairs window, someone standing there, watching. I ran, heart hammering, all the way back to campus. When I reached my room and turned on the light, my breath caught in my throat. There it was again. At the foot of my bed, a pumpkin glowing softly, carved with that same empty face, and beneath it, a note written in red ink. It said, "Trick-or-treaters don't knock twice." I still don't know what happened that night, or who those men were, or what that house really was. But every Halloween since then, someone knocks on my door at midnight. When I open it, no one's there. Just the faint smell of smoke and the sound of footsteps fading away into the dark. I remember that Halloween like it carved itself inside my bones. It feels like it happened only last night, though years have passed. Back then, I was 15, living in a small town called Hollow Creek, tucked between silent forests and misty hills. Halloween was everything to me and my best friend Mia. We were the kind of kids who planned our candy route 2 weeks ahead, marked the houses that gave out full-size bars, and made it our personal mission to outlast every other trick-or-treater in the neighborhood. Every year ended the same way, our arms aching from the weight of our loot, our hearts pounding with sugar and laughter, collapsing on the living room floor to watch horror movies until our eyes gave up. That night felt no different, at least at first. Mia came over around 7:15 p.m., wearing a vampire cape that was clearly made of plastic, the kind that crinkled every time she moved. Her face paint was uneven, her fake fangs too big for her mouth, and she still looked way cooler than I did. I had this ridiculous pumpkin onesie that glowed faintly under black light, way too childish for my age, but I didn't care. We weren't out to impress anyone, only to chase that old Halloween feeling one more time before life got serious. She tossed her candy bucket on the table and grinned, her fake fangs slipping out. "We're hitting Elm Street first," she said with that spark in her eyes. "The old man on the corner always gives out caramel apples." I laughed, shaking my head. "Yeah, but we're skipping that gray duplex again. Remember last year when someone jumped out of the bush with that chainsaw mask?" "I'm still not over that." Mia chuckled through her fake teeth. "You're still scared of him? That was 3 years ago." We ran through Hollow Creek for nearly 2 hours. The streets glowed orange under jack-o'-lantern lights, leaves crunching under our sneakers, cold wind brushing against our cheeks. Kids laughed in groups, running between porches, parents chatted near sidewalks, and the whole town pulsed with warmth. The smell of caramel, pumpkin, and smoke from backyard fires mixed in the air. It felt like Halloween itself had wrapped around us. By the time we got home, it was just past 9:20 p.m. The streets were quieter, fewer kids, more shadows. My mom had already changed into her nightgown, brushing her hair by the kitchen sink. She smiled when she saw us, the kind of soft, tired smile moms give when they're proud but ready to rest. "All right, girls," she said, "keep the noise down and don't open the door for anyone, okay?" "It's too late for trick-or-treaters now." I nodded, pretending to listen while dumping candy all over the rug. Yeah, we know," Mia smirked. "We're angels, Mrs. Reyes." My mom raised an eyebrow. "That's what worries me." When she went to bed, the house grew still. The only light came from the TV flickering blue across the walls. We played Night of the Living Dead and started trading candy, each trying to cheat the other in trades we both knew weren't fair. The warmth of the house made me sleepy, but the wind outside had a sharp whistle, rattling the windows every now and then. We were maybe 15 minutes into the movie when I heard the first knock. It wasn't loud, just 3 soft taps, slow and spaced out. Mia and I both froze. She looked at me, her painted eyes wide. "You expecting someone?" I shook my head, lowering the volume. "Maybe a late trick-or-treater." She glanced at the clock. "It's almost 9:45 p.m. Who's still out?" Something about that silence between knocks felt strange. Usually, kids giggled or shouted trick-or-treat afterward, but this time, nothing. No voices, no rustling bags, only the whisper of wind through the cracks. I stood up and walked toward the front door, my socks sliding on the hardwood floor. My stomach felt heavier with each step. I didn't open the door. Instead, I peeked through the thin space between the blinds. A tall man stood on the porch, still as stone. He wore a dark coat, faded jeans, and sunglasses, even in the dim porch light. His face was pale and unreadable, his jaw covered in patchy stubble. He wasn't carrying a candy bucket, not even a flashlight, just standing there, facing the door. Mia whispered from behind me, barely breathing. "Who is it?" "Some guy," I whispered back. "Doesn't look right. Maybe he's lost. Then why is he knocking on houses at 10 p.m.? "On Halloween?" she said, her voice shaking a little. The man turned his head slowly, scanning the yard, his movements deliberate, like someone searching for something he already knew was there. My chest tightened. After a few seconds, he stepped down the porch, walked toward the street, and disappeared behind the hedges. We didn't move for a long time. Then Mia exhaled. "Dude, that was weird." I nodded, locking the door and checking the window latches just to be sure. I tried to laugh it off, but the sound came out thin. We sat back down, forcing ourselves to focus on the movie, but my mind kept wandering back to that face in the light. 15 minutes later, another knock came, harder this time. My blood went cold. Mia muted the TV. We looked at each other, both frozen. Then another knock, louder, followed by a slow scrape, like fingers dragging across wood. I didn't want to, but I moved to the blinds again. He was back, standing closer. His face now angled toward the window, the glasses gone. His eyes were hollow, too dark to see clearly, but his mouth was pressed into a grim line. I dropped the blinds immediately. He saw me. Mia whispered, "What the hell does he want?" I didn't answer. The knocking grew violent, shaking the door frame. Then it stopped. Silence. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it filled the room. Tap, tap, tap. This time, it came from the side window near the living room. Then another tap from the kitchen window. He was moving, slowly circling the house, tapping each pane of glass as he went. "Stop messing with us," Mia shouted, her voice trembling. That only made it worse. The taps turned into bangs, echoing through the walls. I whispered, "He's going around the back." Mia's face drained of color. "We should wake your mom." Before I could move, a sharp crash shattered the air, glass breaking somewhere near the laundry room. My breath caught. "He's inside." We ran up the stairs, stumbling in panic. My heart felt like it would burst through my ribs. I slammed into my mom's door, yelling her name. She woke instantly, confusion and fear flashing across her face. "Someone's in the house," I gasped. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed her phone, locked the door, and crouched beside us, whispering to the dispatcher. "Yes, this is 44 Willow Lane. Someone broke into my house. Please send help." Mia and I slid under the bed, our breaths shallow, the air thick and still. Every creak from downstairs made me want to vanish. Then we heard footsteps, heavy and slow, moving across shattered glass. He was inside. We could hear the faint sound of drawers opening, the soft scrape of shoes on the tile. Then, nothing. Only the sound of our heartbeat in our ears. Mom whispered, "Stay quiet." Then came a new sound, a slow step on the first stair. Then another. I pressed my hand over my mouth. He was coming up, one step at a time, deliberate, slow, like he wanted us to hear him. My vision blurred with tears. The floor creaked just outside the bedroom. Then silence again. Mom's hand gripped mine. I could feel her shaking. The sirens started faintly in the distance, echoing through the hills. The man's shadow passed under the door crack, pausing. Then, after what felt like hours, the sound of footsteps retreating. The back door creaked open. He left. Police arrived minutes later. Flashlights cut through the hallways. Voices filled the house. They found the basement window shattered, muddy footprints trailing from the laundry room to the back door. But what chilled us most were the fingerprints. They covered almost every window on the first floor, smeared like he'd pressed his hands against each one, searching for a way in. They never caught him. For weeks, I couldn't sleep unless every light in the hallway was on. Every knock, every wind gust scraping against the siding made me jump. Halloween used to be my favorite night. That year, it became the one night I wished would never come again. Months passed. We tried to forget. But Hollow Creek has a way of remembering. The next Halloween, my mom refused to let me go out. Mia and I stayed home, trying to make it a fun night anyway. We carved pumpkins, played music, pretended everything was normal. But around 8:40 p.m., we heard something strange. Kids were laughing outside, trick-or-treating as usual, but the laughter began to fade. Then came a knock at the door. I froze. Mom wasn't home yet. She was closing at the cafe. Mia frowned, glancing at the candy bowl on the table. "You gonna answer?" I swallowed hard. It's probably kids. But when I opened the door, no one was there. Only the candy bowl, half empty. We stared at it. A chill ran down my spine. I hadn't even stepped outside yet. We closed the door, locking it. A few minutes later, another knock. No one there again. Only more candy missing. We decided to bring the bowl inside, but before I could, I noticed something else. Small, muddy footprints on the porch, bare feet, leading toward the house, but none leading away. That night, we didn't watch any horror movies. We just sat in silence, waiting for Mom to come home, every shadow in the window looking like him. Later that week, a couple moved into the abandoned house across from ours. They found old Halloween decorations still hanging inside, fake spider webs, faded pumpkins, and one torn mask smeared with dried brown stains that looked too real to be paint. The cops came again. They didn't find fingerprints this time, only the outline of a hand on the wall near the window. It wasn't flat like a print. It looked dragged, like someone was being pulled away. I tell myself it's all coincidence, that the man was just someone lost or sick or cruel. But every Halloween, when the clock hits 9:30, the wind starts to sound like soft tapping on glass, and sometimes, out of the corner of my eye, I swear I still see that shape on the porch. Tall, still, waiting. I moved away from Hollow Creek years ago, but no matter where I go, that night follows me. Sometimes, I'll wake up to a sound outside my window. 3 slow knocks. And every time I freeze. Because deep down, I know that no matter how far I run, Halloween always remembers. And somewhere, out there, he's still knocking.